All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Time for some Wednesday wisdom, the lost wisdom of the Pharaohs, and diving deeper into the Hermetica, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the Hermetica Tarsha Cornerstone edition from Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy. And we're reading this for purposes of expanding the mind so that we can discover more not only about ourselves and our own spiritual nature and our own psychology, but that of the universe and that of the wisdom of the ages, and particularly in this series, The Lost Wisdom of the Pharaohs, which deals with hermetics and the philosophy of Thoth, the Egyptian god Thoth, or Hermes Trismegistus. He says, "So I, thrice grace Hermes, the first of men to attain all knowledge, have inscribed the secrets of the gods in these sacred symbols and holy hieroglyphs, on these stone tablets, which I have concealed for a future world that may seek out our sacred wisdom." And that is us, ladies and gentlemen, and that is why we are here today. We're seeking out this sacred wisdom and trying to do what Hermes suggested we do. Pure philosophy is spiritual striving through constant contemplation to attain true knowledge. And so we are continuing our journey of constant contemplation, ladies and gentlemen. And this section here today is entitled The Initiation of Hermes. In this chapter, Hermes describes a mystical vision of the creation of the cosmos, upon which all his later teachings are based. And so this ties into the Egyptian mythology and their spiritual traditions, religious traditions, however, mystical traditions, mystery schools, however you would like to describe all that, because there's a lot that goes into it, ladies and gentlemen. So hope you got yourself a nice warm cup of tea or a cold beverage, whatever it is you prefer, ladies and gentlemen, because this is going to be a good one. And that's some good tea. We got a Moringa Tulsi green leaf tea or green tea here. It's a different one than normal, but very good. I like it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will dive right into here what Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy describe about this section titled The Initiation of Hermes. And then after that, we'll dive into the writings of Hermes, thrice great Hermes, Thoth himself. So it begins by saying, quote, Hermes derives his wisdom from a dramatic mystical revelation. So that's interesting to think about there. I'll begin paraphrasing and rambling and ranting like I always do through a lot of this. And it's interesting to think about there that Hermes derives his wisdom from an experience that he had. This dramatic, mystical vision or revelation. And so, there's a lot of people out there that say they're awakening or their, quote unquote enlightenment or new awareness. Awakening, I think, is the simplest way to put it. But, today there's so many fluffy ways to describe woke things out there. And that's not what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about mystical philosophy and spirituality. And so Hermes derives his wisdom, this great wisdom of the ages that has been passed down to us, luckily, through his works that survived the ages, that when we learned in the history of the Hermetica were found by people in, who was it? Hermes and the Reawakening of Europe. Cosimo de' Medici established the new Platonic Academy when they had found the works of Plato and the Platonic philosophy, which was definitely, mystical, spiritual, some people would call it occult, esoteric kind of knowledge. It wasn't just the simple things that were taught in school, ladies and gentlemen. And so eventually they sent out emissaries and they found the works of Hermes. Where was it? Cosmo sent out agents to look for the other lost pagan works that might still be awaiting discovery. And in 1460, one of them came across the lost works of thrice great Hermes and brought them to Florence. Florencia. The Florentines, already reeling from the discovery that an ancient civilization of such immense sophistication, far beyond where we are now, and they knew it back then, had risen and fallen nearly 2,000 years before them. So see, that's talking about these cycles, that we reach these levels of heights and advancement, enlightenment, higher levels of consciousness, civilization, society, whatever it be, ladies and gentlemen. The Golden Age, Atlantis. We reach these levels and then we cycle through them. And I'm starting to think now, within the great year, just to keep it simple without getting off on little numbers, you have 24,000 years, 12 on each side, 2,000 years per each house or symbol, zodiac sign. And so this creates the great year. But I think within each one of these houses, going through the circle, there is this smaller cycle that was being described here, that the Florentines were talking about. This discovery that an ancient civilization that was of immense sophistication had risen and fallen 2,000 years before them being in the Renaissance or the Renaissance. And so the emergence of this glorious new culture in Florencia signaled the end of the Dark Ages. So my rambling and point there was that, and this is all what I get from literally the first line of Hermes here. And this isn't even Hermes talking. This is the author saying Hermes derives his wisdom from a dramatic, mystical revelation. So I'll go back to that, ladies and gentlemen, because I was getting off topic there. That's fun, though. That's a lot of what I think about. Now, while his mind is alert, yet still and empty, he hears God speaking to him. Now, there's another powerful point that I could ramble on for a long time. I'm going to keep it really simple and say, if you are able to clear your mind, remain alert, but be still and empty. Remember the cup metaphor, the man who goes to the master and wants to tell him all the things that he knows about Zen, and then the Zen master says, would you like some tea? And he begins pouring him a cup. And then the cup overfills, and the man says, what are you doing? And he says, you are like the cup. You must empty your cup in order to receive more. And in order to connect with God, quote unquote, source, spirit, Tao, natural energy, life force, Atum, which is described by Hermes as the great one God. But while his mind is alert, still, and empty, so using this ability of being able to clear the mind and being open to receiving. If you want to receive revelation, if you want to receive any kind of guidance, you must be able to empty your cup for at least a few moments and then be able to listen and hear and perceive and discern. Now, Hermes asks, while he begins, while he's in his meditation, still and empty with the mind open, which is a masterful skill and art of its own, he hears God speaking to him, and Hermes asks God, Atum, to be shown the true nature of reality. And suddenly, everything begins to change before him. So he opened his mind. This is funny because this reminds me kind of some of what Matt Belair was talking about with his Thoth encounter and his mystical vision when he was on his own. on his own journey, ladies and gentlemen. That's a great story. So if you've never heard that one, be sure to check out Matt Belair's channel and tell him to tell you about the Thoth encounter, or his encounter with Hermes. Hermes asked to be shown the true nature of reality, and suddenly everything begins to change before him. In a mysterious vision, the book continues, he witnesses the creation of the world. So he experiences creation or witnesses it. This vision is not meant to be understood intellectually, but contemplated like images from a dream. See, now that's deep. Constant contemplation, ladies and gentlemen. There's some kind of a ultimate factor to this contemplation for understanding rather than intellectual knowledge. However, we can explore a little of its deep meaning, the authors say here, Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy. So remember that I'll have to remind everybody here, if you weren't here for last week's episode, is that a book of this size cannot contain all of the Hermetic teachings. It can, however, give an inspirational and intriguing taste of their core doctrines. So the main surviving philosophical Hermetic texts are 18 books known as the Corpus Hermeticum. 17 survive. One of the books is missing. And so these works and these other books that there are, the Asclepius and Stabaeus and various fragments, they're dense and big. So they have selected, the authors here, key sections for us to dive into. So I think it's important to know that. And so Hermes first, because this little section will help us explore a little of its deep meaning, this vision of creation that he's seen. Hermes' first experience is of an all-embracing divine light, which as he watches, casts a shadow like dark, restless water. So this divine light that is casting a shadow, that's deep in itself. Later, he is told that this light is the mind of God, and the dark waters are the unlimited potential out of which God will fashion the universe. This is a mystical vision of the first act of creation, remarkably similar to the modern scientific theory of the Big Bang. I would say very different. The Big Bang is definitely missing the mark, ladies and gentlemen. An explosion of light and energy slowly cools to become the black womb of space, into which suns and planets and finally ourselves are born. This birth, like any birth, is accompanied by pain. And Hermes hears an inarticulate cry of suffering from the turbulent depths. Very fascinating. The light then speaks a word which calms the chaotic waters. Remember now, this is referencing the Egyptian philosophical, spiritual, mythological. This is the ancient Egyptian understanding of the reality of nature and the reality of the universe that we find ourselves in. And I love it. This stuff is so fascinating and so deep because it's so connected to many other works from different cultures that describe similar things. And there's got to be some connection, ladies and gentlemen. No, there's got to be some, something that is implied by the connections. That means there is something behind all of it that may be the same thing. And we're all talking about the same thing in different ways. But we'll continue. The light then speaks a word which calms the chaotic waters. This word is like a blueprint. Ooh, that will organize a structured cosmos out of the chaos. Modern science might call it the fundamental laws of nature. And it's funny, yesterday in our Tuesday Tao, we were talking about, the your natural way, the laws of nature, natural law, flowing harmonious with the natural way, aligning with that, but so many different things there. And so call it the fundamental laws of nature. Fascinating. This word is the first idea in the mind of God, so from which everything springs. Initiated into the secrets of the creation, Hermes receives his divine mission from the Supreme Being. Only this knowledge, he is told, can save those who live in darkness. Hermes must become a spiritual guide to all mankind. Wow. So that gets really intense right there at the end. And that's the last bit of what Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy put in there to describe this selection from the initiation of Hermes. But it is that only this knowledge, he is told, can save those who live in darkness. Hermes must become a spiritual guide. I'll add a guide of light, a light bearer. Maybe, I don't know, translations and connections on that name are go off into different tangents. So we're talking about Thoth here in Hermes, but he must become a guide. Oh, remember, it was Hermes who gave fire to I was just talking about this with someone a couple of days ago, and they were trying to remember. It was like, yeah, wasn't it Hermes that gave light to people, or fire, or something, something like that, ladies and gentlemen? So there's a correlation here that he is the one who has to save those and bring them out of the darkness into the light, into enlightenment, ladies and gentlemen, true understanding. It's a good tea. Good tea. Initiated into the secrets of creation, he receives his divine mission. So maybe we are, as we slowly initiate ourselves into this ancient, esoteric, mystical knowledge, wisdom of the ages, maybe it slowly becomes our mission and our divine mission to also follow in the footsteps of Hermes, thrice greatest, to save those and bring those who live in the darkness out of the darkness and into the light by becoming a spiritual guide to all of those we come in contact with. That doesn't mean you become their guru. That just means, as an example, being the change that you want to see in the world, selecting your actions and your behaviors and how you want to have an impact, or a resonating energy on your environment. And if that sounds too silly for you, this whole resonating energy idea, then think of it simply as, when someone in an environment is very angry and frustrated, it makes it feel a certain way when you're in that environment with them, compared to when people are very happy and jovial. And there is different energies in the world. This doesn't mean that happiness is 100% of the time thing, but we can have an impact by having a greater awareness and then acting on that awareness and understanding. So what we're doing here by studying this is trying to create an ability to achieve a higher quality of life and experience a much higher quality of life. Not only us, but for those in the world around us and our loved ones. Now, if you're getting value, ladies and gentlemen, consider subscribing. If you're already subscribed, leave me a comment and smash the like button. I love to hear from you and get back to each and every one of you as much as I can. Sometimes the videos in the past, the comments don't really show up to me, so it's kind of like, but the newer ones, definitely. And so shout out to A1, shout out to Guerrilla Press for being really great supporters of mine. And so I appreciate you and love you both very much, sending you the best energy and thoughts from the mind of God, from the Akasha principle, which we were all connected to the mind of God. If you remember, that was one of our first lessons here about how we can come to know the mind of God by understanding the fundamental laws of nature or the cosmos by which it all functions. Anyways, that was a few episodes ago. So if you want to check out that video and go deeper into our connection to the mind of God, then check that out. But now we go into the writings of Hermes, thrice greatest, Thoth, THOTH, the initiation of Hermes. He begins by saying, quote, "My senses were suspended in mystic sleep. Not a weary, full-fed drowsiness, but an alert and conscious emptiness. Released from my body, I flew with my thoughts. And while I soared, it seemed to me a vast and boundless being called my name. Hermes, what are you looking for?" "Who are you?" I asked. "I am the way guide, the supreme mind, the thoughts of Atum, the one God. I am with you, always and everywhere. I know your desires. Make your questions conscious, and they will be answered. Show me the nature of reality. Bless me with knowledge of Atum," I begged. Suddenly, everything changed before me. Reality was opened out in a moment. I saw the boundless view. All became dissolved in light, united within one joyous love. Yet the light cast a shadow, grim and terrible, which, passing downwards, became like restless water, chaotically tossing forth chaotically tossing forth spume like smoke. And I heard an unspeakable lament, an unarticulate cry of separation. The light then uttered a word which calmed the chaotic waters. My guide asked, "Do you understand the secrets of this vision? I am that light, the mind of God, which exists before the chaotic dark waters of potentiality. My calming word is the Son, S-O-N, of God, the idea of beautiful order, the harmony of all things with all things. Primal mind is parent of the word. Just as in your own experience, your human mind gives birth to speech. They cannot be divided, one from the other, for life is the union of mind and word. Now, fix your attention upon the light and become one with it." When he had said this, he looked into me, eye to eye, until trembling, I saw and thought limitless power within the light to form an infinite yet ordered world. And I was amazed. I saw in the darkness of the deep, chaotic water without form, permeated with a subtle, intelligent breath of divine power. Atum's word fell on the fertile waters, making them pregnant with all forms. Ordered by the harmony of the word, the four elements came into being, combining to create the brood of living creatures. The fiery element was articulated as the constellations of the stars and the gods of the 7 heavenly bodies, revolving forever in their celestial cycles. I added the word there. So revolving forever in celestial cycles. The word then leapt up from the elements of nature and reunited with mind, the maker, leaving mere matter devoid of intelligence. My guide said, "You have perceived the boundless primal idea, which is before the beginning. By Atum's will, the elements of nature were born as reflections of this primal thought in the waters of potentiality. These are the primary things, the prior things, the first principles of all in the universe. Atum's word is the creative idea, the supreme limitless power, which nurtures and provides for all the things. I have shown you everything. Why do you wait? Write the wisdom you have understood in hieroglyphic characters, carved on stone in the holy sanctuary. Make yourself a spiritual guide to those worthy of the gift of knowledge, so that through you, Atum may save humankind." I was overwhelmed with gratitude to the All-Father, who had graced me with the supreme vision. In awe and reverence, I prayed, "Please never let me fall away from this knowledge of your being, so that I may enlighten those who are in darkness." Then, with his power in me, I began to speak. The Aluf laughed at my words, but others knelt at my feet. I told them to stand and receive the seeds of wisdom, which I sow in you with these teachings. So listen, men of clay. If you do not pay keen attention, my words will fly past you and wing their way back to the source from whence they came. Woo! Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Boom to knowledge, boom to wisdom. Holy cow, that was incredible. That was super deep. I mean, talk about constant contemplation. You could contemplate on the meanings of that one and the correlations and the connections, and so deep, ladies and gentlemen. Holy cow. Holy cow. I'm wondering how much I should ramble on about that and how much I should just leave for contemplation. But for purposes of continuing thinking about it, so you don't have to listen to the same thing over again to keep thinking about it, or so you don't have to get this book for yourself to put it on your shelf, which you should. It's linked in the description below. But he says, so we talked a little bit about the beginning there. The senses were suspended in this mystic sleep, not a weary, full-fed drowsiness. Yeah, I'm glad the translator relates it there to having eaten too much and being like, whoa, but an alert and conscious emptiness. Then he talks about astral projection and astral travel. He says, released from my body, I flew with my thoughts. He says, while I soared, it seemed to me that a vast and boundless being called my name. Hermes, what are you looking for? Who are you? He said. And then Atum speaks to him, or the mind of God. a part of, like another piece of the whole, I guess. I am the way guide, the supreme mind, the thoughts of Atum, the one God. And he says, I am with you always and everywhere. I know your desires. So this is the force, the source, universe. I'm thinking of it that way. You can take it any way you want, ladies and gentlemen. This is where these are all open for contemplation here. So if you disagree and you're getting something different, then interesting. That's perfect. Let's see what we discover. But right here where he says, I know your desires, like, so I already know what you're thinking. However, the problem is you must make your questions conscious. Because what is it, ladies and gentlemen? So often it's our unconscious that's running our lives. And so I think here's a hint at manifesting, or, using this great wisdom to create a higher quality of life for ourselves, is that we must make our desires and our questions conscious and begin to consciously live, consciously begin to choose knowingly, not unknowingly. If you're like, what is this whole unconscious and conscious thing? Knowingly, like actually being aware of what it is rather than being unaware and just doing. So back to the whole being a human being, actually being aware and conscious and living consciously rather than being a human doing, just doing and repeating the unconscious patterns of what society tells us we're supposed to do. But so Atum tells Hermes here, Thoth, show me, or no, he says, yeah, show me your questions. Make them conscious so there can be a connection, because I guess apparently the universe will not work with, or source, Tao, Atum, God will not work with your unconscious as much as it will your conscious. I just thought that was a really deep part there about when it comes to manifesting, is like, he goes, I'm always there with you, and I know your desires, but make them conscious so that I may act on them. It's fascinating. And they will be answered, he says. Make your questions conscious, and they will be answered. See, this is very interesting. It's making me think of another thing that I've been learning from a fictional story back there, the Red Pyramid, is that in Egyptian times, they had these little wax figurines that they would use as like spiritual, I don't know, there's a lot to look into that, and it's very fascinating, but check that out. Maybe we'll get into that deeper in the future, but it relates to being what's talked about here, is they were like answerers, and they would ask, or they would answer the questions of their magicians that used them. And so it's interesting there that he says, make your questions conscious and they will be answered. That was making me think of these answerers. And at the end of the thing here, it says, so listen, men of clay, and pay keen attention. So that's interesting that I don't know, I was just making that correlation myself there. And so then Hermes says, show me the nature of reality. I mean, what great, if we got a chance to talk to God, ladies and gentlemen, what would you ask? Well, God, show me the way that everything works. Show me the answer to all the greatest questions. And that makes me think of, what was the book? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And they like find, I forget the exact story, but they ask these immortal beings, like, what is the nature of reality? And the answer to all the greatest questions. And they come back, and deep thought, this machine that they created to answer this question, which is funny they call it deep thought. It makes me think of Thoth, and the mind of God and what we're talking about here. But the answer came out as 42. And the millions of people gathered to learn the secrets of reality. And the answer to the ultimate question, the answer was 42. And so they were all like, 42? Deep thought. How can this be possible? And the computer says, well, maybe it wasn't the right question. Maybe you need to figure out the ultimate question. And so the Earth in that story, what was designed as a computer to figure out the answer, or not to figure out the answer, but to figure out the ultimate question that they could then ask deep thought to learn the answer to the mysteries of the universe. See, that was just a funny sidetrack that is related to all this. See, it's all connected, ladies and gentlemen. It's all connected. Show me the nature of reality. Bless me with the knowledge of you. But he's speaking directly to Atum, and he still says, bless me with the knowledge of Atum. He begged. So suddenly everything changed before him. Instantly, he has entered into this mystical vision, and reality is opened up before him. I've heard people describe this astral traveling, from spiritual medicine adventures. I forget how you say that, but plant medicine induced spiritual journeys that describe similar things here to what Thoth or Hermes was describing, to where you go and you're like zooming out of the planet, and then you're zooming out of the universe, of the solar system and the galaxy, and then things begin to fold into a new way, and like you can see parts of reality, and very, very mystical stuff, ladies and gentlemen. And a lot of people that aren't open-minded would be like, oh yeah, that was just a hippie drug trip. It's for you to decide. But here it is in the writings of Thoth from over 2,500 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, I think. Now, he says, I saw the boundless view, all became dissolved in light, united with one joyous love. And see, that's another thing that a lot of people talk when they have this out-of-body God, experience, is that it's just pure oneness. In other words, it's just pure love. Like there is no, and a lot of people that have this experience describe this love feeling, this feeling of just pure oneness or love, as so warming and comforting, like a kundalini, like, or it's just so warm that you don't want to come back. And so a lot of times they have to choose. They're given the choice. Do you want to return? I mean, some people even experience this with near-death experiences, ladies and gentlemen. So this is very fascinating that it was being described here by the words of Hermes in the initiation of Hermes. And it's very interesting that the light casts a shadow. Grim and terrible, so polarity is starting to happen from this oneness. And this is the description of creation. Passing downwards became like restless water, so very turbulent, chaotically tossing forth spume like smoke. And I find that spot really interesting. I wonder what that actually translates to. Because what's the importance of the smoke there? And the spume, whatever that is, in the restless water. And then the unspeakable lament, like this struggle of the inarticulate cry of separation. So it's the beginning. It's like it's the beginning of duality, the creation of duality out of oneness. And so I'm thinking that cry, inarticulate cry, was part of God, I guess, part of it all, which we are a part of, noticing and lamenting over the separation from source and oneness, or at least feeling that way, because it was still a part of it all anyways. And then the light uttered a word, probably reminding that it is all still oneness, which calmed the chaotic waters. Now, this is also making me think of we'll keep that for the side, ladies and gentlemen. And so his guide asked him, or Atum, the way guide, this part of Atum, asked him, Do you understand the secrets of this vision? I am that light, the mind of God, which exists before the dark chaotic waters of potentiality. My coming word is the Son of God. See, that confuses the heck out of me, because that just makes me think where Christianity got their ideas from, but, or at least some of it. You can see that the Christians totally took a lot of their theories from what they deemed as pagan works, ladies and gentlemen. But it's so weird that it's translated here. My coming word is the S-O-N of God. So not the Son, which is usually referenced in Egyptian spiritual philosophy, but it says the Son. And isn't it odd that when we got into about the word before, that was, what was it? It was John 1:1. Remember, the word was with God and God was the word, or something like that. Isn't it weird that, I don't know, that one's just throwing me off there. I don't even know what to think about that. My coming word is the Son of God. Oh, oh. So maybe the word, or the frequencies that have the power to create reality, is his child. Not in a being sense like we think of a son, but it is his descendant, because he is not a being either. He is just the force, or the universe, the mind of the universe. And so to sin from a source, a spaciness kind of thing, something that isn't physical, but can appear in the world of duality through resonations of frequencies and sounds, and then form into what we create as a written language, hieroglyphs, having a mystical power. Remember, the sound reflects the meaning represented by the word. Translations will distort much of their meaning. My teachings, here we go. The very sound, so expressed in our native language, the teachings are clear and simple. For the very sound of an Egyptian word resonates with the thing signified by it. And so the word, my calming word, is the Son of God. It is the descendant of the force, or the mind of God. Not a physical descendant, but something that comes into our reality, that is a part of it, that allows for so much of it to be. Because he says here a few lines later, they cannot be divided one from the other. Okay, my calming word is the Son of God, the idea of beautiful order in harmony of all things with all things. Primal mind is parent of the word. Okay, see, it's making more sense. I didn't get this when I was reading it through for the first time, so this is why I'm glad we're constantly contemplating, ladies and gentlemen, and taking the advice of Thoth and Hermes. And so my calming word is the Son of God. This is what calmed the chaotic waters in the beginning of creation here, the separation of light and darkness into duality, and the paradoxical unity of duality in reality. Wow. We're getting deep here. That's why I love this, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're getting value, because I know that you are. This is really good stuff. Smash the like button. Now, primal mind, Atum, the mind of God, or that part of the force that is the mind of it, is parent of the word. Just as in your own experience, the human mind gives birth to speech. So remember, we are the micro version of the macro. We are in the image of God, so to speak, as other traditions described it. They cannot be divided one from the other, for life is the union of mind and word. So, life, reality, existence is the union, the oneness of these two polarities, these two opposite polarities, light and darkness, or positive and negative, or mind and word. And I'm wondering which one of those would be deemed the positive or negative polarity that has to do with the elements. But that's deeper research into hermetics. They cannot be divided one from the other. Life is the union of mind and word. Now fix your attention. So he goes back there to this ability to be conscious rather than unconscious, and focusing your attention. That's the number one lesson in the initiation into hermetics, this being the initiation of Hermes, but the ability to focus the mind on one single object. Remember, we referenced the cup in the past and how easy it is for us to have our minds just lose track, a new train of thought, so to speak. And in the ability to fix your attention upon what it is you want to create, or what it is you are trying to understand or discover. Once we have the ability to fix our attention, then we can make a lot more progress because of the union of mind and word. It says, now fix your attention upon the light, part of this duality, and become one with it. So he's like, okay. See, this could be a reminder to us here, living in our daily lives in modern times. Focus your attention on the light, ladies and gentlemen, and become one with it. Because there's a lot of darkness out here, and we can focus our attention on the dark and become one with it if we want to. And that, in my opinion, would be missing the mark. Just my opinion. And I'm no master on all of this. This is all up for discussion. And remember, as we described in the history of the Hermetica, it's when these things, these philosophies, were open for debate and discussion and practice and comparison widely among people, was when the greatest times and the greatest minds of our history and our greatest cultural flourishings and many things like that. I was trying to find the exact quote here from the book, but that's the gist of it. It's when these things were able to be practiced, discussed, compared side by side, and was open for debate and contemplation, and wasn't swept under the rug and called paganism, and you can't even think about this, and destroyed, like this destruction of Alexandria and poor Hypatia, man. Anyways, see, I get off on some good rambles there. I hope you enjoy that, ladies and gentlemen. I always wonder if I actually went where I was meaning to go with it, because I have that kind of mind. I don't know how far I was going down that track before I got on another one, and I don't know where the destination of that one was before I got on this. Become one with it so you can focus on the light or the dark, and you find what you look for in life. That's the simplest reality to understand. Secret of the universe, you find what you look for. So make sure to look for what you want to find in life. When he had said this, when Atum had said this to Hermes, he said, he looked into me, eye to eye, and these are capitalized, not like your eye, E-Y-E, but the eye, the I that is the self, which is a deeper philosophy in its own, until trembling I, the self, Hermes, saw in thought limitless power within the light, the ability to form an infinite yet ordered world. He says, and I was amazed. I saw in the darkness of the deep chaotic water without form, permeated with a subtle, intelligent breath. The breath of life that's referenced in many ancient spiritual traditions. And I was amazed of divine power. Atum's word fell on the fertile waters. See, this is where you could extrapolate a lot. I'm just kind of ordered, making them pregnant with all forms. So it's like interesting there, ordered by the harmony of the word. And this is where the four elements came into being. So this is a deep part too here. The word from the mind. So fascinating. Well, we were just saying all about the word and the mind and the word coming from the mind goes into and impregnates these waters, which are the separate from the light, but have unlimited potentiality. Ordered by the harmony of the word. So think about a frequency again. Ha, om. Ordered, and that makes me think of Narnia. How when even in that story, even though it's another fictional universe, but it was referencing a lot of things. If you know anything about those authors, C.S. Lewis and many of the others that ran the same circles were friends, knew things about these mystical, this mystical wisdom of the ages, the occult and esoteric knowledge about reality, or at least philosophies about the nature of reality, said this very same thing in her stories, where Aslan, being the god, this lion god, created Narnia, or reality, for them on the other side, out of his voice. He's like walking around and it wasn't like a roar, they described it. It was more like a beautiful harmonic, really loud, but a beautiful harmonic sound frequency. Anyway, sorry. I like to bring in, fictional things to keep it light, ladies and gentlemen, and also show you that there are connections and things that we wouldn't even expect to this, the lost wisdom of the Pharaohs. It's all connected. Now, so the harmony, the sound frequency of this word, created out of this waters, the fertile waters that were pregnated now. Fascinating. And this could all be translated differently, I'm sure, from the original texts. So keep that in mind. But the four elements came into being, ladies and gentlemen. We have ourselves the earth, the air, the fire, and the water, and the different polarities. And it creates the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom and the mineral kingdom and the Akasha principle up here and all of those things. This is the magician before the magician is in the symbol there, because it'd be difficult, ladies and gentlemen, to paint the magician. It'd be difficult to paint the magician. But so we get our four elements that come into being, combining to create the brood of living creatures. And so that's the plant and animal kingdom and the mineral kingdom. It's interesting, though, that it only mentions the fiery element here. I'm wondering if in the longer version of this section of the works of Hermes, if it describes each element, but here it just says the fiery element was articulated as the constellation of the stars, as we know, the electric or the fiery principle. And the gods, this is even more fascinating, the fiery element is the gods of the seven heavenly bodies. So if you don't know already, each of the planets is one of the gods, ladies and gentlemen. And their power still has influence on our psychology and the way that our mind works through magnetics and frequencies and electromagnetic frequencies that affect us. So if you think the gods aren't still here with us, then you need to look into things like astrotheology a little more, if you're interested. I don't know. I'm just rambling here today. It's already 2:09 p.m. where I am. So I really have no idea how long we've gone on. Probably getting close to an hour. I can feel it. But this is fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. We are discovering a lot. So the gods of the heavenly bodies revolving forever in celestial circles. That's an interesting point there. The word then leapt up from the elements of nature. This resonant frequency pops out of nature and reunited with the mind the maker, it says, leaving matter, its creation, devoid of this power of the word, or devoid of intelligence, it says. And then Atum tells him here, you have perceived the boundless primal idea, which is before the beginning. That's another good point there. This creation was before the beginning. So you know how in Christian, in the Bible, it says, in the beginning. Anyways, it begins within the beginning, but this is before the beginning. And so it continues, by Atum's will, and this is Atum saying this, or at least the way guide of the mind of God, the elements of nature were born as reflections of this primal thought in the waters of potentiality. These are the primary things, the prior things, the first principles of all in the universe. Atum's word is the creative idea. See, I think that section right there really needs to be contemplated on more, because there's power in it. The supreme limitless power, which nurtures and provides for all the things that through it are created. See, this is describing manifesting here, ladies and gentlemen. And if we could really come to know and understand what that whole bit was about. See, I messed up the zoom there, but anyways. Deep, deep, deep. Through it all things are, I have shown you everything. Why do you wait? So Hermes or Thoth is probably sitting there like, holy kid, like trying to understand and take in all that he's seen. Atum's like, what are you doing waiting here? Write the wisdom you have understood in hieroglyphic characters. And there's got to be something that we haven't been told by academia about the power, the mystical power of hieroglyphic characters. Carved on a stone in a holy sanctuary. Even more unique. Luckily, Thoth or Hermes had the ability to go into the holy sanctuary and start carving on the walls hieroglyphic characters. Because, it would have been too bad if he was like, well, Atum, they're going to kill me if I do that. But to those worthy of the gift of knowledge, make yourself a spiritual guide. And I find this interesting because this is a big thing from ancient times, is not giving the spiritual wisdom to everybody, but only giving it to those worthy of the gift of knowledge, so that through you, Atum may save humankind. Spiritual philosophy and wisdom, the wisdom of the ages and the wisdom of the Pharaohs, may save humankind. I was overwhelmed, Thoth, Hermes says, with this gratitude to the All-Father, who had graced me with the supreme vision of reality. In awe and reverence, he prayed, please never let this knowledge fall away from me. This knowledge of your being, so that I may enlighten those who are in the darkness. Then with this power in me, I began to speak. It's so funny he says that there, that I may enlighten those that are in the darkness. Just trying to fix the zoom there. But anyways, because we're thinking about the Dark Ages and how this knowledge and this wisdom, this ancient mystical wisdom, whether it be Hermetic or Platonic or, all the different versions of this ancient pagan spiritual wisdom, the wisdom of the ages and the ancients, always leads to that right there, that from this knowledge, we may enlighten those who are stuck in the darkness. And it always brings us out of the Dark Ages. whether it be a small year, 2,000 years, Dark Ages, or a great year, 24,000 year Dark Ages. I mean, the Dark Ages in 24,000, but the time that the Dark Ages takes place in the great year or a small year. And so it always bothers me when I can't fix the zoom. Boom. All right, we got it, ladies and gentlemen. Much better, much more clear. I mean, come on, you got to be able to see the beautiful painting in the background. And so you've received the idea, this knowledge, wisdom of the ages, can enlighten and bring those out of the darkness. Then, with this new power in him, Hermes says in Thoth, he says, I began to speak. So I'm guessing he was already back now in reality and, back into society where he was. He says, I began to speak. And the aloof, so I'm guessing he meant there, the people that aren't very open-minded, the closed-minded, those who will just travel, I forget how I described it earlier, but the wayward in life. And he says, will not receive these ideas. But the aloof laughed at these words, this divine spiritual revelation, spiritual enlightenment, the spiritual revelation. They laughed at it, but others knelt, and he told them, stand. So I love that bit there about not allowing them to remain kneeling and worshiping him. He's like, no, 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 stand. Do not kneel before me, because we are all a part of this. And so he told them to stand and receive the seeds of wisdom in which I will sow in you with these teachings. And so the final line, and I said that bit about the men of clay. So listen, men of clay. If you do not pay keen attention, remember, conscious, focus, the words will fly past you and wing their way back to source from whence they came. It actually says from which they came, but boom, ladies and gentlemen. So we have to pay keen attention in order to catch the wisdom. And it's so funny that it ends with that, because the beginning was my senses were suspended, but alert and conscious emptiness, and all that, ready to receive the wisdom. Deep, ladies and gentlemen. That was powerful. That was fascinating. I definitely got a lot out of that. I hope you did too. And I appreciate all of you for being here. Don't worry, we're not quite done yet. We'll say our common parting words. But the next section, ladies and gentlemen, will be the being of Atum. In this next chapter, next week, Hermes attempts to describe God. And we do a lot of that on this channel here, so we need more of it. In quotations, Atum, or parentheses. So God is Atum. Although God cannot be defined with words, so it agrees with the Tao. So funny, we talked about this yesterday. If you missed the Tuesday Tao and the nature of God, go check that out, because that'll fit right into next week's wisdom of the ages, wisdom of the pharaohs. God cannot be defined with words. Hermes gives some clues for us to contemplate and to continue our constant contemplation. Boom, ladies and gentlemen, that's a boom to wisdom, and that's a boom to knowledge. Once again, thank you to all of you for joining me here on the channel, on this video, and supporting me. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. I don't think I would have continued as much as I did if I didn't have at least one person showing up every now and then. And thank you to those of you joining me here on the premiere. I love seeing you guys and love kind of chatting back and forth in the chat room, seeing you all the best thoughts. And so remember, ladies and gentlemen, seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness and a greater understanding of the reality and the nature of reality that we find ourselves in. And remember to seek to discover the hidden wisdom of the ages and the mysteries of our history. And also remember that there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. So if we can begin to make that the thing that we bring to life and practice on bringing it to our journey, then the things we're always striving for, saying, oh, I'll be happy when I get there, are irrelevant because we're already there. And then the whole journey is wonderful, hopefully, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Thank you so much. I love and appreciate all of you. I'll see you here next week on some more Tuesday Tao and some Wednesday Wisdom, and we'll do some more short videos in between now and then. So once again, I love and appreciate all of you. Be sure to expand the description and check out a link to my Etsy shop. I think I still only have that painting and one other, but they're both really great price, as well as a link to the book so you can get it for yourself to put it on your shelf, and a link to C60 Propel Power, the most powerful antioxidant known to man. Give yourself the gift of health, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Love you guys. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Be the example.